Hello, welcome back to BlenderSushi Live Noding. In this video, I'm going to take you through step-by-step creations of like a 360 panorama viewer using Blender and Blender Game Engine. So this is actually like a special video because it's my first video to talk about Blender Game Engine, and there will be like a little bit of nodding part, but most of the talk is actually pretty basics. If you never used Blender Game Engine before, this is probably a good video to get you started with it. And so while learning about how to create a 360 viewer, you can also learn a little bit more about Blender and Blender Game Engine. A little bit background story. Actually, around 3 years ago, I already created an article that talks about it, like how to create a 360 video panorama viewer using Blender. And I kind of went through and read through my article and kind of thinking what have changed today. Um, Basically, today you already have like a lot of ways to publish 360 video or 360 image. The one that's really obvious is maybe if you're using Facebook, and if you are uploading like 360 photos into Facebook, it will turn it into like an interactive viewer. And if you're using like a mobile device, you can kind of rotate the mobile, and the gyroscope will understand the rotations, and you can look at the panorama. I make a note here that you can also use the YouTube. You can upload any 360 video, and as long as you have the right metadata and the YouTube recognize the video as a 360 VR panorama video, it will then display it as a panorama. You can also create your own website with a HTML5, and maybe with the right applet you can display 360. And you also have Sketchfab, which is a website to display your 3D model. You can also use Sketchfab to show your panorama. And there's also Unity Game Engine, and now we also have Blender, of course. For many few years now, Blender Game Engine can actually do this kind of interactive, to create like an interactive app to display like a 360 artworks. And of course, it's a game engine, so you can add your own 3D model. You can add interaction, all sort of things that possible just by using Blender. Okay, so basically let's have a look at the final result. So this is the Blender 3D scenes. What I have here is just like a spherical objects. If I turn off the texture, so it's just like the normal sphere, and I apply my equirectangular panorama photo into the sphere as a texture, and I have a camera in the middle, and that's all we need. And if I switch to material and jump into the camera view and hit P while in the Blender Game Engine, hit P, and now I'm actually running the game. And you can see I can I kind of zoom in and zoom out, and can look through my 360 photo. So this is basically what we're gonna be creating. Sorry about the flickering. I think it's because of recording. Yeah, so a little bit of background story also. Earlier today, I stumbled into this Sketchfab by FABKZO. Where's the original? Let's see. Yeah, actually, we know that we're gonna need the sphere, right? And Blender by default, let's start from scratch. Okay, before I talk about FABKZO, I'm gonna start from scratch. So this is your default Blender scene. Gonna save it as viewer panorama demo 001. So whenever I make a video, I always kind of make it so that even if this is the first time you use Blender, you can kind of follow. So this is the default Blender view. You want to switch to Blender game engine right away. We're not gonna use cycles or Blender internal renderer. We just gonna be using the Blender game and its interactive rendering. So switch to Blender game. Now nothing much changes except that there are other things behind the screen that we will see later. So we have this cube and the camera and the light. We can leave it like that. For our 360 panorama viewer, we're gonna need a sphere. Okay, so we don't need this cube. I can delete the cube and Shift A and isolate the UV sphere. By default, the UV sphere actually doesn't have the UV unless you pick the UV here, and we can probably increase the rings. And now we actually have a sphere with the UV that we can use to generate our panorama viewer. Let me have a look at the UV real quick. I switched to edit mode, and then I'm gonna switch to the UV editing. And you see the UV is not actually, it's not perfect for what we are doing. It's not gonna work nicely. I don't know if there is a way to make this UV better, but the UV that we need is actually more like it's cleaner. The way I get the UV is actually by getting it from this Sketchfab by FABKZO. So apparently this is something that I stumbled by accident earlier today. He actually has a blog post that talks about Panorama a lot using the open source tools. So this is actually definitely worth looking and check his work as well. And with his work, he embeds his 360 panorama photos in his website, but he also he also show a way to do it using Blender and Sketchfab. So I was really lucky to find out about this website. I will study this a bit later, but if you want, just search fabkzo.com and find this article. And so jump into his Sketchfab. This is actually just like another way you can display your 360 image. It's basically all you need to do is just download his blend files and then make changes into the sphere textures and then re-upload it back into Sketchfab, and you get this 360 viewer. So this is actually a perfect example, and if you want to go this route, feel free to do that. You don't have to use Blender engine, but this is just another different way you want to approach it. But I'm gonna use Blender engine anyway and just show you some of the basics. So Sketchfab looks like this, and I'm gonna download it. If I download it, it's gonna give us the blend file. So Sketchfab and Blender files can work together. So that's another like a cool feature of Blender. And I'm downloading this blend files. It's gonna take 3 minutes. Well, actually, cool, it's a bit faster now. decompressing the zip. Okay, hopefully I can open it and show it to you. Show in Finder. Okay, this is the file. This is the sphere UV. Now let's open that file real quick. File, open sphere UV. So this is the example from FABKZO. You can see the UV of these objects is actually a lot cleaner. You see how it's all square, and then you can just apply your own panorama photo and it's gonna apply this nicely. So this is what we're gonna use for our panorama viewer. What I'm gonna do, create a new file. Okay, start again, or actually open my previous file, delete the cube, and I'm gonna import that sphere. So the way to do it in Blender is to append, go to File, Append, and then we go to Desktop, and let's find our file, Sphere UV, and get into the object folder and get the sphere and just append it. So we have our sphere, and this sphere is perfect for us. Let's check if this is already has texture. So apparently it carries the texture from the other blend files, but we can delete it, or we can just replace it using our own 360 panorama image. So let's delete that. Open. I have my example, I think, from this. Let's just pick this one for now. So I'm still seeing the old texture. I have a feeling it's better if I just get rid of the material and start from scratch. So we're going to delete the material. I'm still seeing that texture. Okay, now it's correct. So apparently I need to switch to GLSL, and I'm gonna switch to Blender Game as well. Alright, so we have our kind of spherical 360 image viewer. Almost, it's pretty much ready, except that it's we need to turn it into something that's interactive, and it shouldn't be this small. I have to enlarge it. Okay, at the moment we actually are looking at this sphere from the outside, but for what we are doing, we actually need the camera to be inside of the sphere, and you will see that by default, if I run this, we're gonna see nothing. See, it's invisible. If we are inside of the sphere and then I run the Blender game engine and tapping P, it's nothing. You can't see anything. So that's one problem that we need to tackle. If we are outside of the sphere and I run the game engine, we can still see the sphere. Okay, so the way it works is by default the Blender game engine only renders from the normal of the objects. If the normal is flipped, we cannot see the objects basically. So the normal is kind of like the facing, the polygon face that's facing the camera. And obviously by default the sphere normal is facing out, so we need to kind of flip normal. Now that I've flipped the normal, back to object mode, if I turn on the back face culling, now we can see the inside. And if we actually jump into the inside of the sphere now and hit P, we can see the inside of the sphere. In fact, now we are always seeing the inside of the sphere, and we cannot see the outside surface of the sphere. So that's good. We take care of that. We don't actually need the light because we can delete that, because our material is already set to shadeless. This is actually a convenience that we get if you're downloading FABKZO example. Where is it? Yeah, if you download the blend from Sketchfab, you basically have the sphere that's ready to be used inside the Blender game engine. So what's next? We have the camera, we have the sphere, but we don't. We are missing one thing, which is the interactions, because and in order to do that, we need to use a script that we can download from another website. So you can actually read in my blog that I get the script from Blender Artist forum. It's called the Ultimate Mouse Look. This is actually a Python script, and you can think of the Python script the way we use it inside Blender game engine is more like when you're using animation nodes or sphere chalk, you just you can turn the whole nodes tree into one script nodes, and just use that script. Basically, that's what you need to do, and then you just need to plug in the script into Blender game engine kind of node system that looks a little bit like this. Okay, so just jump into this forum posting and then grab the Ultimate Mouse Look script. I already downloaded earlier, so now if I switch to the game logic layout, this is what I'm gonna use to apply the interactivity into the camera, so that we can control the rotations of the camera to follow the mouse. Okay, so let's open the script. So I already have it in my desktop, the Ultimate Mouse Look script. Let's open it. There should be some information. So thanks to Will Casella for sharing this script. Requirement: attached to the camera an always sensor with a pulse mode on. Okay, that's actually quite simple to do. So basically, first let's put the camera in the center of the world. Select the camera, Alt G and Alt R. Now the camera is reset into the default position. Next thing we need to do is just to switch to this panel. This is a game logic panel, the logic editor. It's kind of similar to sphere chalk. It's similar or animation nodes, like it's a node editor. You can connect the sensor to the controller to actuator. So it's just a different terminology. What you need to do, let's switch back to my blog. In my blog, I actually made a little bit of modifications, but for this demo, we don't need to do this ping pong stuff. So jump to the camera. Let's add a sensor. The sensor should be set to always, and the controller should be Python, and we just need to assign this script. We don't need to change anything, and just connect this to that guy. So the sensor is basically, if you imagine a Blender game engine as a node, the sensor is going to be the input, you know, like your mouse or keyboard or joystick controller. That's going to be the sensor. It's waiting for data to come in, and then the controller is kind of it's gonna do something for if you provide input, it's gonna process the input and make the game engine to do something to the scene. So I believe we also need to have always sensor with pulse on. Just turn this on. I think that's all we need to do. If we run the game engine now, if we jump into the camera and switch to the texture mode and press P, yeah, it's already working for us. So that's perfect. In my blog, I actually say that you might want to turn off the AWSD kind of keyboard controller, because what happened at the moment is this mouse look script. If I switch to the full screen and then press P, now this is kind of the game engine running. You see, I can zoom in and zoom out, move to the left or to the right, and control the orientation using the mouse. But I can actually move too much to the left, and I start seeing the sphere. This might be okay, but in reality, you don't want the user to be able to do this. It would be nicer if the camera is just stay in the center positions like 0, 0, 0, but the user can just look up, down, and left, right, and perhaps rotating the camera using the keyboard, but not allowing the user to be able to do this. And maybe you want user to be able to do this. It's totally up to you. But if you want to give this ability to the user, you need a way to reset the camera somehow. So that's totally up to you. You can turn it off. If you want to turn off the mouse movement, you can just comment one of this script, like so at this moment it's also watching the keyboard input. So WASD, if you comment out this guy, like maybe comment out the A and D like this, just using the hash, that's this means the user will no longer able to move to side by side. I think that's pretty much it. Probably with the camera, let's switch to the camera. This is the default camera. It has focal length of 35. You might want to switch that to 22, so it's more like, so you have like a wider viewing angle, just like a human eyes, or maybe even further, like 12. This should be okay. Now let's test it. So that's definitely a little bit wider. The start and the end. If the clipping is too small, you will start clipping the sphere. So you don't want to do that. So I just set it to 1000. Camera presets. I guess doesn't matter too much in this case. Depth of field, etc. You can try it yourself. Oh yeah, by the way, with the current Blender engine, you cannot actually have like a texture for the world. You cannot apply texture to the world. That's why we need to create this sphere, and we also need to ensure the sphere has a nice UV like the one we downloaded from FABKZO Sketchfab. So that's one important thing. What else? If you want to publish your app, you can go to user preference and find game. There are actually two add-ons here: game engine publishing and save as game engine runtime. This is probably the one you want to have, you want to load. And once you have that loaded, you can just file, export, and save as game engine runtime. So it's gonna be like a bundled app that you can share to your friends, or maybe you can sell as well. But this is rather simple 360 viewer, so it's not doing too much. Maybe just for yourself. In my blog, I actually mentioned about how you could use a video, like a running, like a real-time video, and in this case, it should be like a 360 video. This is I wrote this like 3 years ago, so there must be some changes. In the past, you need to save the video as a OGG video format and apply it as a video texture. And maybe today you can just use MP4. I don't know. I have to check that. But if maybe I should do another video that talk about video panorama. And yeah, what else? I think the good thing, like the advantage of using Blender is that you can perhaps add more interactivity. Maybe when you're inside the game engine environment, you can perhaps click. In this case, you can click on the bear, and then maybe by clicking on an object, you can switch to another panorama. You know, that kind of storytelling that you cannot do yet using YouTube or using other tools. You can, although you cannot actually use Unity. I wrote down here Unity game engine. I think it's kind of open source, but you need a license if you want to sell it as an app. But Unity is also a good tool, but for now we're just gonna use Blender. Let's see, what else did I miss? Material needs to be shadeless. Camera view, okay. Backface culling, I talked about that. Camera mouse controller, okay. Export as an app. Stereoscopic, 60 frames per second. Okay, stereoscopic. So basically, if you so far I'm only running the game inside this small 3D view. So if I hit P, so this is the game running. Let's switch to the camera first. Hit P. Now it's like interactive, and I'm controlling using my mouse. Okay, but it's a bit small. You can actually view it as a standalone player and make it a full screen. Let's try doing this. Hopefully this works while I'm doing recording. Hopefully my Mac is strong enough to do this. Okay. Okay, yes, it seems like it's working, but it's not full screen. Let me stop that. Trust me, if you're running it yourself, not recording, it should work. Back to this view, turn off full screen. You can have like AA samples. That's actually if we have like 3D objects in the scene, if you have the AA samples off, you will see the 3D objects as kind of pixelated a little bit. What I mean is, again, realizing that Blender game engine is running in a 3D environment, you can of course add your own 3D objects. Okay, don't forget about that. Just imagine of this panorama as your 3D, kind of like the dome. Like this is basically like the world environment map, right? Let me switch to the outliner so I can turn off the sphere for now. If we add our monkey, for example, let me save this. So this is the default monkey. It's a low resolution. Okay, nothing fancy, but I'm gonna smooth it and increase the resolution. Okay, I'm gonna add a material, and perhaps I will need a light. Add a lamp, sun. Okay, sun lamp. Rotate the lamp. And give the more like yellow color lamp. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Let's check it out, how it looks. It looks funky because I actually need to switch this to the material. Now this is actually more like the final result you're gonna see in the game engine. Maybe I can have a point light. Point light, give it like a blue, so that's a little bit nicer for our monkey. The shader, you can definitely make it better. This is like the default shader. It's just white. Give it a bit of color. Give it a material. Give it like some like a normal texture. Maybe have like a bump map, etc. You can actually have like a really good looking 3D, but it's actually interactive. Remember that this is gonna be what we see inside the game engine. Okay, I'll have the monkey, and I'm gonna have the text as well. So RX 90, rotate X 90 degree. So the text, I guess I can use a better font. That's my favorite text at the moment. BS BlenderSushi. Let's give it some thickness. Let me test it real quick. So I hit P, and okay, that's what we get. Apparently I need the material for the text. Okay. So maybe just BGE 360. That's much better. And let's add just for fun, BlenderSushi snail logo. Give it a material. I have not tried this, but you can also use the glass shader. alpha anti-aliasing. Translucency. Not sure if Blender game engine can display like a glass shader or transparent shader, but I will try. Shaderless, invisible, no. Game setting. Use material as text. Don't worry. Opaque. Transparency. Okay, transparency. Alpha. And smooth, shade smooth. Okay, that's pretty. That's enough, I think. Just a quick test. So back to the camera. Jump back to the camera. View. Cameras. Active cameras. Now turn on the sphere again. And full screen and tap P. Now back inside the game engine and we are running the game. So apparently with the text we lost the thickness. I need to turn that into mesh, but at least the text is working now, which is good, and the BlenderSushi logo is also showing up. The monkey looks good, even though it's pretty plain. But really, I think it's if you have like a good 3D model with a nice textures and so on, you're gonna have like a really good looking 3D, just like basically more or less like a 3D that you can find in a Sketchfab. Let's try find one Sketchfab Blender 3D model character. I've seen some really good 3D model at Sketchfab. Actually, I was really impressed by it. Sketchfab, and it's actually animating as well. Funny monster character. Maybe we'll find one. So funny monster character, Blender GIMP, Blender 3D. Okay, that's really good looking 3D model. I wonder if it has the Sketchfab version of it. Oh well, basically I think Sketchfab is amazing web service that allows you to kind of showcase your 3D models. And of course, if we are doing it like this, you know, like looking at just a sphere, this is like a super basic thing that Sketchfab, maybe not what the Sketchfab is for, but it's still like a viable and useful way to display 360. So again, back to Blender. What I want to say is whatever you see in the Blender game engine, and if you can give it a nice light and then give it a nice texture with a normal map and all sort of fancy stuff, save it as blend and then send it to Sketchfab. You basically have the 3D model ready to be viewed by anyone on with internet. So that's really cool. Yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it that I want to talk about today in this video. It's just like introductions to Blender game engine, but also you learn how to create this 360 panorama viewer. Even though it's basic, I know it's based on an old tutorial as well, so it's nothing particularly new about it. But yeah, hopefully it's if you watch this video and have a look at the Blender game engine capability, you might want to try it yourself and make your own applications. Yeah, so thanks again for tuning in to BlenderSushi channel. You can leave comments and questions down below, and if you like this video, you can give a like as well. Thanks again. Please subscribe if you want me to make more of this kind of video. Yeah, other than that, I'll see you